All right, block 3 of 49ers training camp has wrapped up. They've got a player's day off tomorrow, which is Monday, then block 4. And guess what? We can say that it's game week now. Preseason game week, not actual regular season game week. You're going to have to wait about a month for that. 49ers Jets on Monday Night Football. I think they're already advertising for it on ESPN and ABC, but it is game week as far as preseason week 1, 49ers and the Titans go. So we can check out a 53-man roster projection right now because I wouldn't say that things are fully rounding into form, but we have good hints of what the 49ers might do at this point. 10 practices in and the preseason games coming up. And a lot of the bubble spots, they're going to be highly impacted by what happens on the actual field when live tackling is a thing. And that's something that the 49ers don't have during the course of their training camp practices. You don't tackle fully to the ground at practice. So positions like running back, linebacker, the types of positions that you can evaluate much more thoroughly with the live tackling actually happening, look out for those positions when the 49ers and the Titans take the field in Nashville next Saturday. So with that being said, it's time for the 53-man roster projection. We're going to go through every single player. And as we go through every single player, we're going to look at how that position group might be constructed once the 49ers cut this roster down to 53 active players and obviously build a 16-man practice squad. A lot of what you should be watching both camp and these preseason games for, you need to view it through the lens of building this roster. There's limited space, obviously, but I think there's more space relatively than there was not too long ago because of the practice squad rules, because of the fact that you can have a guy as a yo-yo, especially early in the season. And you have to remember that some veterans, they might not make that first 53-man roster, but the 49ers can bring them back after week 1 so that their contract is not fully guaranteed for the season. There are different maneuverings that can happen. There's also been a significant rules change regarding the roster this year that might allow the 49ers to keep more players that they like in the building. And that is the injured reserve rule. You can put 2 players on IR before the 53-man cutdown and have them designated to return for the season. They have to miss at least 4 games, but it used to be that a player that you put on injured reserve without making the 53-man roster, his season was done. That's no longer the case, and I think the 49ers can take advantage of that rule, and I think they will take advantage of that rule when the cutdown happens because they do have so many eligible players to make that 53. The problem, and it's a problem you like to have with a really loaded roster, comes at the cutdown. And teams not only, respect the 49ers roster for how many good players they have, but they just like the 49ers system. So we've seen it every season. Teams are praying. They're like vultures. They're ready to grab players that the 49ers cut. It was Ilm Manning, the offensive lineman last year. And I'm sure given the buzz coming from the 49ers and how deep their roster is, guys that they cut, expose the waivers, or even just release, and they're able to sign elsewhere, other teams are going to be interested in them. That's been a year in, year out occurrence for the 49ers. So anyway, we're going to start at the bottom here. We're going to start with the defensive back position. We'll work our way up to Brock Purdy, Brandon Ayuk, and that offense. But I sometimes like going in reverse order. I think it's a good time to do that here. Starting with the cornerback position, I think that you've got the general framework of who the 49ers view as their top corners in practice down. Charvarius Ward and Deommodore Lenoir are their top 2. But Isaac Yiadom is somebody who they really like at that outside cornerback position. And what they're going to do is this scheme under Nick Sorensen now, but with Brandon Staley obviously putting some of his fingerprints on it. The 49ers have gone back to the basics, but they also have brought in a guy who's loved cornerback versatility in Brandon Staley. He had Jalen Ramsey playing outside and playing in the slot, moving back and forth as that star position for the Rams back in 2020. So given the structure that the 49ers are playing with, there is a tremendous amount of importance on the slot cornerback position. And you have to put one of your quicker players there. You have to put one of your best DBs there. There was an issue last year, and this was even when the 49ers were running Steve Wilks at defensive coordinator, but Wilks was trying to imprint his own defense with what the 49ers were already running. And one of the big problems there was Isaiah Oliver, more of a Steve Wilks guy, came in and he couldn't cover well enough to what the 49ers needed within the structure of their existing scheme at the nickelback position. They didn't have enough change of direction and short area quickness from Isaiah Oliver, who was built, and they later moved him to safety later in that season. He was just a little bit too big, didn't pack the COD, the change of direction that they needed at nickel. So this season, with nickel obviously being a big time emphasis, I mean, some of the best receivers in the game are playing in the slot, not outside, more than 60% of the time. One of those guys is in the 49ers own division in Cooper Kupp. So you've got to have a good inside cornerback. And I think the 49ers are dedicating premium resources to it this year. Every single indication that we've seen from training camp has pointed toward Diamondo Lenore being at that nickel position. But you're not always going to be a nickel, right? The 49ers also need to defend the run better than they defended it last year. And if you want to defend the run better, you've got to be good in base. So what are they going to do in base? Well, Diamondo Lenore calls himself the hyena. He's obviously a really scrappy guy, really physical guy. I think his shoulders have broadened since he's entered the NFL. He's excellent against the run. So he's definitely your cornerback too, outside of Charvarius Ward, who had the lowest missed tackle rate in football 2 years ago amongst all corners. So we know Charvarius Ward can crack down against the run. But you take Yadam off the field. Yadam is a little bit more slight of frame compared to Ward and Lenore. So in base packages, which are going to run about 30% of the time, it's going to be Ward and Lenore on the outside. Okay, then the question is, who makes this roster as far as depth? I really like what I've seen out of Renardo Green, the second-round pick out of Florida State so far. I call it a dogfight because Renardo Green loves to call himself a dog. We know Jawan Jennings is a dog. Twice they've been at each other's throats. Not fighting, but dogfighting, I guess, going at each other in coverage. And one time Jawan Jennings won. The other time Renardo Green got the best of him. And we've seen Renardo make some physical pass breakups already. And that's exactly what he was doing throughout his time at Florida State. He was playing some of the best receivers in the country, including Ricky Pearsall when Florida State played Florida, and he did very well against Ricky Pearsall. He also did really well twice against LSU, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. So based on the production in college, and Renardo Green led the ACC in pass breakups, we figured this guy might be polished enough to deliver right away. And to me, it seems that he's competing with some of the stronger guys on the 49ers roster. That's Jawan Jennings immediately. My one concern, and it's still a concern until he can prove it in an actual game with Renardo Green, was I thought maybe he was going to need to put on a little bit of muscle. A great example is Diamondo Lenore, who's gotten stronger over his time with the 49ers. He's very, very barrel-chested now, big, strong shoulders. Lenore's not going to get pushed around. And, you know, you need that because you're playing inside. You're playing at that nickelback position. So you're going to be part of the fray much more often. It's almost like a glorified linebacker spot when you're playing nickel, especially against the run. There's just bound to be a whole lot more traffic, a whole lot more blocking that you have to get around or fight through. So with Renardo Green, the 49ers want him to be just as versatile as Diamondo Lenore because Demo's going to command a lot of money. Either the 49ers can pay him early, which, you know, Demo might not want to do. He might want to bet on himself this year, and he can hit unrestricted free agency next offseason. He's going to command a lot of money as one of the better cornerbacks in this game. So how do the 49ers build a succession plan just in case they can't re-sign Diamondo Lenore or Charvarius Ward? I think they probably re-sign at least one of those guys, but you've always have to have capable cornerbacks in the pipeline, and they need to be capable of replicating the job that is currently being done on the front line. So they started working Renardo Green over the spring at slot cornerback, and then they moved him inside, outside, and he's been doing a little bit of both for the 49ers, and I think that he's been as impressive as he can be this early in his career. Does that mean they want to thrust him into action right away? No. But it does mean that he's going to be on the 53-man roster as a second-round pick. You've got some insurance in Rock Ya-Sin, who for the first time all camp today was starting to get some first-team reps. Rock Ya-Sin is an accomplished corner in this league. So they've got a veteran here. He played for the Ravens last year, has been around the NFL. They have a veteran who's very physical. We've seen some good coverage from him. We've seen him lose some physical battles as well. He lost a physical battle today to Ronnie Bell, who we'll get to when we talk about the receivers. But when you talk about cornerback depth, the fact that you've got Rock Ya-Sin, somebody who could give you quality snaps in a pinch, just sitting there waiting in the wings, it's not bad for the 49ers. And I do think that, especially given some of the first-team reps that we've seen from him, he is on the inside track to make the 53-man roster. Darrell Luter Jr. has got a pick to his name. Luter, listen, he's got really long arms. He's built for the press man coverage the 49ers want to run. I think that they would have played him much sooner when they were thinner at the cornerback position last year, if not for the bone bruise that he suffered. When was it? I think that put him on PUP at the start of the season. So it must have happened at OTAs. And he wasn't activated off of PUP until about midway through the season. Obviously, Luter did play. Unfortunately, he was the player who had the punt go off of his leg in the Super Bowl. So he saw some special teams action down the stretch last year. But as far as playing cornerback, and you think about, again, you think about contingency plans, especially for the future, and positions possibly opening up in 2025. And you look at the fact that Ward, Yadam, and Lenore are all in the final years of their respective contracts. Darrell Luter Jr. is a player you want to continue to develop, and he might even be ready to contribute a little bit now based on some of the work that we've seen from him on the second team. So at this point, you're probably wondering, okay, I've got 5 or 6 cornerbacks, if I'm counting the nickelback Lenore. How are the 49ers going to deal with Ambry Thomas, with Samuel Womack, with Chase Lucas? They've already cut a corner in Kamon Hall, because I think it was very apparent with how deep this room was that just wasn't a clear path for him to make the roster of the practice squad. So how are they going to deal with Ambry, somebody who's been a hero for them, who intercepted that pass against Matthew Stafford, covering Odell Beckham Jr. in Week 18 against the Rams? How are they going to deal with Samuel Womack, somebody who was a fast rising prospect just a couple years ago? What about Chase Lucas, somebody who was a really good gunner for the Detroit Lions last year, who is competing for that nickel spot, but it just looks like there's limited room for the 49ers on this roster? Well, I'll tell you what, I think that the rules will work in the 49ers' favor here, because I think they're going to be able to take an extra player. As you could see in my roster calculator, on the left side of this 53-man projection, which is the left side of this line, currently have 56 projected. But as we speak right now, Drake Jackson is almost certainly going to start the season on PUP. So that's actually only 55. He's not going to count toward that total. Dre Greenlaw is almost certainly going to count the season on PUP. So that's 54. And then, as I said, you're going to have 2 injured reserve spots that you can designate as eligible to return for the season. So that can open up 2 more potential spots for the 49ers. Now, I don't know who's going to be hurt yet, but injuries do happen. It's just an unfortunate part of the game, and we're still about a month away from the roster cut down. So assuming that there are 2 injuries to players between now and the cut down that are going to affect the 49ers from weeks 1 to 4, or at least for week 1 and 2, and you want to use one of those injured reserve slots on that player and you could designate him to return, that's going to open up 2 more roster spots. So they can take advantage of that new rule. And then I see it as a battle between Ambry Thomas, Samuel Womack, and Chase Lucas for 1 more spot. Hell, if they want to take 2 more corners, if it's that valuable to them, then maybe 2 of those guys make it. But just the way that I see it is the 49ers going to have to get creative to keep guys in the building, and so they can't get poached by other teams. That might be one of the mechanisms that San Francisco uses. Of course, you can also cut and then re-sign somebody that you think won't get poached by another team to the practice squad. So we'll see how it all shakes out. All right, now we're going to move to the safety market. The Titans just signed Quandre Diggs to a deal worth only $5 million this year. So that safety market is not very active. Justin Simmons is still out there for reference. Will the 49ers sign anybody to add to it? Maybe at the cut down, they could think of it. I think that Malik Mustafa, who you see shaded here in green, has been impressive enough for the 49ers early in this season to say, hey, maybe they try to work this guy in like Talanoa Hufanga got worked in 2021 as a third safety, kind of a creative box type of player that, hey, he had that interception on day 1 where he showed he could cover too. Dobbs, I think it was Danny Gray on the play, and Malik Mustafa came over from center field and was able to pick the pass off. So he runs a 4.49. He is built like a ball of muscle. He's a shorter player. They call him a mini linebacker, but he's physically developed. And I think he's a really good tackler. I think Malik Mustafa is somebody that you can watch this game on Saturday in Tennessee, and you'll probably see him tackling well based on what I saw on his tape in college. And I would put him in the category of the players that we really need to see in a preseason game to see the full effect of what they can do on the field, because live tackling has not been a thing yet. But Malik Mustafa But Malik Mustafa can obviously deliver that live tackling for the 49ers. That was my fault. I accidentally X'd out of the screen. Hopefully I didn't lose too many of you. I do have to reshare the screen though, so we're good to go. All right, there you go. We're back to the roster. We're still talking about the 49ers safety position. So who's starting at safety? Well, Talanoa Hufanga, they're expecting him to potentially be back around mid-August. He's still on PUP. He's recovering from the ACL, but he doesn't have any crutches anymore. Doesn't have a brace. He's in the final stretches of his rehab. We saw Talanoa on the sideline over the past couple days. Assuming everything goes on schedule, Talanoa Hufanga is going to be back. The 49ers are going to evaluate him before or right around the time of the joint practices against the Saints. And those are on August 15th and August 16th. Okay, so you have Talanoa. You assume that he works into it over the course of the back half of August. Maybe he doesn't start right away in September, but you've got a quality body in the safety room, at least in an ideal world for the 49ers. I know you can never take an ACL recovery for granted, although it's a much higher success rate now than it was in the past as far as guys getting back up to speed. Achilles injuries have been more tricky, and unfortunately, that's what Dre Greenlaw is dealing with. So assume that Hufanga is not a week one starter. Just assume that this takes longer. I'm not saying that it will. Assume that the 49ers have to do what they're doing right now in practice. Jair Brown has been an absolute ball hawk. Second-year player, several interceptions already. In college, Jair Brown led the entire nation in interceptions of players that were eligible to enter the 2023 NFL draft at Penn State. So he had a nose for the football in college. He's got a nose for the football now. He intercepted Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Remember when they first thrust Jair Brown into action, where they were desperate at the end of that game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year, and they needed him to hold on for dear life, and Baker Mayfield went right at Jair Brown in the red zone, and he was there ready for the assignment, ready for the challenge, and he got the job done. I think that what we saw last year in that working duty from Jair Brown really established trust from the 49ers end. And what we're seeing this training camp has been a continuation of that. So right now they're fine with Jair Brown and George Odom being their top two safeties. Now Odom is obviously a placeholder for when Talanoa Hufanga does come back, but Odom hasn't been bad either. The key is to have a high floor at that safety position, especially since the rest of the defense is so damn good. You've got a really good defensive line. We'll get to them in a second. You've got really good linebackers. You've got really good corners. So you just have to make sure the safeties are not blowing coverages and screwing it up. I think there's a lot of trust in somebody like George Odom for that very reason. I think that he hasn't blown coverages during camp. The 49ers can trust him as a veteran presence. He is where he needs to be. It's not like they can't trust Malik Mustafa, but he's a rookie, and you generally want to work rookies in more slowly. They did that with Talanoa Hufanga in 2021, working him in as the third safety down the stretch of the season. And they did that last year, actually, with Jair Brown, working him in behind Tashawn Gibson. And then, his opportunity did come when Talanoa Hufanga tore his ACL. So I would expect the 49ers to go veterans first until Talanoa Hufanga comes back. And again, that might be week one. It might not. We'll see. And then work Malik Mustafa in later. Historically, this team has carried only 4 safeties on its 53-man roster, which is why there's not a logical spot to add another one unless Talanoa Hufanga suffers a setback or if somebody else gets hurt. So I think that the drafting of Mustafa plus the verification that he can indeed play, and we've seen a lot of good stuff from Malik Mustafa on the field, actually has encouraged the 49ers to not be as interested in the safety market as they were before. Remember when they hosted Julian Blackmon, who re-signed with the Colts? They hosted Rayshon Jenkins, who signed with the Seahawks. They were really interested in adding a veteran safety at that time, I guess at their price. Obviously, that was something that didn't happen, but that was before they drafted Malik Mustafa out of Wake Forest. So it's everything needs to be viewed in context, right? And the context of this is that the 49ers may have their 4 safeties now. I do think that it's health dependent, though. And Talanoa Hufanga, while he's still on PUP, you cannot assume anything until he comes off of it. I would expect an update there, though, in about 10 or 11 days. As far as the guys on the outside looking in, Taylor Hawkins and Eric Harris have been on the practice squad before. I think those are two potentially trusted names to be on the practice squad again. Is there room for Jalen Mahoney, the undrafted rookie out of Vanderbilt? We'll see. That's the type of guy that's going to have to make some flash plays when he has a chance in the preseason. He's going to have to show that he's a gamer. We haven't seen a flash play from him yet during training camp, but guys are going to get their opportunity. You're not invited into this building on the 90-man roster unless the club believes that you have a chance of making it. Otherwise, they'd be burning a roster spot. So don't count Jalen Mahoney out yet, but have that as one of the guys that you watch. I mean, he went to Vanderbilt. That's in Nashville. He gets to play his first NFL preseason game back there, not in Vanderbilt Stadium, but in the Titan Stadium. And we'll see if Jalen Mahoney can show out on Saturday. All right, that's your defensive backfield. I think the corners are definitely the deepest that the 49ers have had under Shanahan and Lynch. And the safeties, well, to me, that's a little bit more of a we'll see thing just because there is that tenuous situation of Talanoa Hufanga's recovery. But I think the 49ers have Mustafa having them feel a whole lot better than they were feeling a few months ago when they didn't have Malik Mustafa. I think that they see some real upside with him. The other day, he came in on a blitz. It was just like a missile. They had this defensive package called the Panther package in Wake Forest. And so Mustafa, who's at the safety position, and Diamondo Lenore, who's at nickelback and cornerback. These are two guys that I think really fit with some of the quirky curveballs that Brandon Ayuk, a little slip there, that Brandon Staley might throw into this defense. Talking about a lot of Brandons today. Brandon Staley in the past has really advocated for flexible positional roles for his defensive backs. So you go to the Rams in 2020, the star position with Jalen Ramsey playing both outside and inside cornerback. And that obviously helped the Rams be a very good defense that year. And then he went to the Chargers where obviously Staley was the head coach. But he still had his fingerprints on some of what that defense did, especially the secondary. And Derwin James was brought down from the safety position to cover people a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if, obviously we're already seeing it with Diamondo Lenore, but to break Malik Mustafa into the NFL, I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers found some creative usages for him, because at Wake Forest, especially on third downs, they ran the Panther package. And in the Panther package, Malik Mustafa, he was even a down defensive lineman on some snaps. Like he'd put his hand in the dirt and he would rush. So he was a really good pass rusher. He's coming in from outside linebacker, coming in from the stack, and obviously playing center field safety as well. And he was able to kind of vacillate between those two at an effective enough level to where offenses didn't know which way he was going to go. Is Malik Mustafa going to come into the box, or is he going to go back and cover? He disguised it well, was a very good player on tape at Wake Forest. And, if he can port any of that skill set to the NFL, Brandon Staley is the type of coach that has shown that he can use those type of skill sets within his defense. All right, so I went really in depth into the secondary. Why don't we go to the linebacker position? I highlighted it there. By the way, if you guys want to follow along, I will put this on the YouTube link. So I'll put it in the comment section on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, or you're going to have to go to the YouTube to get the link, because I can't post a link to this on Twitter, but there you go. I think I have tweeted it at some point. But there you go. It's in the YouTube section. Somebody else has put it up there. Oh, the copy and paste wizard. Interesting. That's funny. This is the link. I don't know if you can click on it if you're on Twitter, but go to YouTube and you'll be able to click on it in the chat there. So the linebacker position, as you can see, obviously Fred Warner, he's a total stud, best linebacker in the league. There's a lot of question about the number 2 spot because Dre Greenlaw is almost certainly going to start the season on PUP. That's where he still is. We've seen him out of practice. Signs are good, but it's an Achilles injury that was suffered in the very last possible game of the previous season. So that's not good for his potential availability early in 2024. Devondre Campbell is who the 49ers brought in from the Packers, free agent, to be the stopgap at that linebacker 2 position. But this football team would really like to see some of its youngsters step up. And they've got a lot of options. They've got D. Winters, who has really impressed them over the spring. And today he finally got some first-team snaps at that third linebacker spot. So not in the Campbell spot, but in the third linebacker spot. And they've got Jalen Graham, who also saw some first-team reps today. They also have Ezekiel Turner on the football team, but Turner's more of a special teams ace. He actually blocked a punt from Mitch Wishnowsky when he played from Arizona in 2020. That was the season opener at Levi's Stadium. So I don't think that Ezekiel Turner is a particularly strong candidate for the 49ers to try to grab one of the top 3 linebacker spots. But I do think that D. Winters and Jalen Graham are. The veteran safe play, if you don't feel comfortable with Winters and Graham out there, is Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, who's been with the 49ers for a long time, a bunch of one-year contracts. He's like the Ross Dwelly of the defense, although Ross Dwelly is obviously no longer around. He's with the Atlanta Falcons now. But Flanagan-Foles missed practice today. We don't know why yet. That meant that it was Warner and 1. It was Devondre Campbell and linebacker 2. And then it was Winters and Jalen Graham splitting time toward the end there, linebacker 3. Now, obviously, that's only base downs because you generally take the third linebacker off the field in nickel. Tatum Bethune, the 7th-round pick out of Florida State, is also an option. And Curtis Robinson, who's been a veteran that's been really good with the practice squad and being shuttled back and forth and special teams, he's also still around. I think, based on what I've seen, that this is my projection right here. Because remember, Greenlaw won't count against one of the 53-man spots if he starts on PUP. So you've got Warner 1, Campbell 2, Winters 3, Graham 4, Flanagan-Foles 5, and they've carried 5 much of the time in the past. They might be able to carry 6. Now, if they don't carry 6, it's because they don't find the requisite value there of a roster spot for somebody like Ezekiel Turner. And they try to go with him on the practice squad, although that's going to be tough because he's been an accomplished veteran on special teams. But I think that you carry Winters and Graham at this point. I think they've actually shown enough. They've flashed enough in their second year to give the 49ers a very, very good feeling about them. Bethune is tough for me, the 7th-round pick out of Florida State, because I don't think he's great in coverage. And that was his issue in Florida State. I mean, the guy hits. The guy's got instincts. He sniffs out screens. To me, he's a real gamer. You'll put on the tape. He always got the job done for Florida State. But in one-on-ones, I think we've seen some of the coverage liability, the tighter hips. I think that we've seen that on display. I would really, really like to see him where he could hit people and tackle people to the ground, which is why these preseason games, I think, are such a big deal for Tatum Bethune. And, not just him, but the rest of the linebackers too, because it's a tackling position. And you can't really show your full skills in practice. So, but Bethune, who's a guy that, I talked to his defensive coordinator at Clemson, Florida State, Adam Fuller, who he said that I had to rein him back. Adam Fuller would talk about Tatum Bethune is just going out trying to decapitate people. He wasn't saying that he was a dirty player. He was just saying that this is a very, very eager player in many ways, like Dre Greenlaw. Somebody might incur a few flags just because that's how he plays. He's the enforcer type at the linebacker position. So if that's his strength, yet his weakness is coverage, well, in camp where he can't fully tackle and fully hit people, but he can only cover, he's obviously going to look a little bit worse, right? So, and you have to gauge things by how guys are going to play on game day. So I'm actually really excited for Tatum Bethune and his opportunity to shake up this linebacker picture, but I think that's going to have to end up happening in preseason games. We have somebody saying that he'll end up on the practice squad. I think that's a real possibility. 7th-round pick, you could probably get him through to the practice squad, but we'll see how he looks in these preseason games coming up. All right, moving on to the defensive line. The one thing about the D-line is that it is overhauled. They weren't good against the run last year, especially the interior. Guys like Armstead and guys like Javon Kinlaw scored much better as pass rushers than run stoppers, which might have been ironic to many people. To me, there was some irony there, right? They drafted Javon Kinlaw and everybody said, all right, he's a monolith against the run. This is great, but he's going to have to develop as a pass rusher. Or Eric Armstead, one of the best defenders in the league on the inside against the run. When they moved him full-time to defensive tackle halfway through 2021, that's when the 49ers run defense surged from number 20 to number 1. But Eric was also playing next to DJ Jones back then. And DJ Jones was gobbling up a lot of double teams. Also, Eric Armstead was healthier back then. And some of the injuries, I think, finally started compromising his ability to play that stout run defense. So some of the injuries, plus no DJ Jones, all of a sudden Eric Armstead became a much better pass rusher from the inside than a run stopper. And Javon Kinlaw, he developed into a pass rusher. Maybe the knee situation also hurt Javon Kinlaw as a run stopper. But regardless of how the 49ers got to that point, and some of it might have been on Steve Wilks too, obviously, for I think deprioritizing the run defense in a way that the 49ers had not been accustomed to. Regardless of how you got to the end point was not pretty. The 49ers had been the number one run defense in the league in 2021. They'd been top 2, top 3 in 2022. And then all of a sudden, they're number 26 by EPA per play against the run in 2023. You can't fall from number 1 to number 26. It just doesn't work, especially for a team that is pass rush oriented. You have to stop the run so you can have some fun. And the 49ers couldn't have a lot of fun, especially in the NFC Championship game over the course of the first half, or even for a lot of the game against the Packers, when they're giving up 4 or 5 yards a carry. And this traced back all the way to the Browns game, the first game they lost, week 6 in Cleveland. Cleveland didn't have competent quarterback play at all, but they're able to run against the 49ers, and they were able to control game flow against the 49ers. Anyway, it was a big issue that the 49ers needed to overhaul. So they didn't retain Kinlaw. They obviously cut Eric Armstead. Both of those guys are on the East Coast now, and you see a whole lot of teal on here. Teal means new veteran free agent. So they've got Malik Collins to replace Eric Armstead. They picked up Jordan Elliott from the Browns to replace Javon Kinlaw. That's the tandem that they're working with on the inside. Is Elliott going to be better against the run than Kinlaw? Well, he was number 6 in run stop win rate amongst defensive tackles last year. That's ESPN's measurement. How often does he beat running blocks? The metrics disagree on Jordan Elliott. PFF doesn't like him. ESPN loved him. He was, at the end of the day, even though he started many games for the Browns, he's a rotational lineman for the 49ers. The rotation goes 8 linemen deep. You have your front 4 and you have your second 4. Maybe in some games you'll go with a 9-man rotation, but typically they go with an 8-man rotation. So you have 2 starting defensive ends, 2 starting defensive tackles, and then 2 backups at each position. So I firmly anticipate Jordan Elliott, who, by the way, had a great practice the other day on Saturday. He was in the backfield a lot. He's a wide body. I fully anticipate him being that number 2 defensive tackle where Javon Kinlaw was last year. Then you look at Malik Collins. Okay, where is he going to be? Well, I think he's the starter. 99. Is he as good of a player as Eric Armstead in his prime? No. But I think that when you look at availability, that's what the 49ers were doing a cost-benefit analysis. Armstead was going to cost them, how much did he make from? I think he made $14 million a year from Jacksonville. So the pay cut that Armstead was willing to take was obviously way above what the 49ers were willing to pay him for the availability issues. He had missed 13 games over 2 seasons. So what the 49ers did is they said, okay, we'll trade the 7th round pick for Malik Collins. He'll cost us, I think he's costing $8 or $9 million this year. That's under the budget that we had for Armstead. It will free up a little bit of money to make other maneuvers. And they think they can get better run defense out of a more lower to the ground stout player like Malik Collins. Is that going to end up being the case? Well, my argument would be that it can't get much worse than last year as far as run defense. I mean, number 26 in EPA per run is really, really tough. I mean, it's going to be hard to beat anybody in the playoffs at number 26 against the run. And it was really hard to beat the Packers. It was really hard to beat the Lions. And obviously they didn't beat the Chiefs, and run defense was an issue in all 3 of those games. So I see it as what you had last year. You can only move up from that. And that's why the 49ers have rehauled the defensive line, especially the interior. I haven't gotten to the edge yet, but they obviously have 2 new players there. And Yetur Gross-Matos, one of those 2 edges, he can also give the 49ers flexibility inside. By the way, those of you watching on Twitter, make sure you go ahead and check out the YouTube channel. I can actually share links over on YouTube. So subscribe over there and subscribe to the podcast, Lombardi Lounge. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and obviously it's on YouTube as well. But I could share the links and do all the live stuff much more easily on YouTube. So why don't you go ahead and check that out? All right. Anyway, back to the roster as we go through this defensive line. I mentioned Yetur Gross-Matos. He played for Carolina before. I have him here listed as the second defensive tackle in the rotation. But he's a lot like Arden Key, Charles Omenihu, maybe a better comp. I think he's a little bit heavier than Arden Key. But the 49ers view Yetur as somebody who can play defensive end, but also in pass rushing situations can move in to defensive tackle. In run situations, you want bigger defensive tackles. In pass rushing situations, you obviously want more athletic defensive tackles. So say that they want Malik Collins in there on base downs, but then in pass rushing downs, you obviously are not going to take Javon Hargrave off the field. He's a total pass rushing stud. He's one of the best in the game. So what about a front of Bosa, Yetur Gross-Matos, Javon Hargrave, and Leonard Floyd as your NASCAR package? And that'd be a real NASCAR package considering the fact that Leonard Floyd is built like a wide receiver. I mean, they've got a speed rusher now opposite Nick Bosa for the first time since Dee Ford. And unfortunately for them, Dee Ford was injury prone. But Leonard Floyd has not missed a game in 108 chances. He's not injury prone. Leonard Floyd is like the bionic man. He's limped off the field a couple times this training camp, and he's been back on like the next play. Every time that you think he's out, no, Leonard Floyd is back in there, which to me is remarkable for a guy who probably weighs 240 pounds dripping wet. Again, he's built more like a wideout, and he's playing with all these big 300-pound linemen. He's in the fray, but he knows how to contort his body. He obviously has a ton of speed. He's ran around Colton McKivitz a few times. He's done a good job when he's lined up on the other side against Jalen Moore. I mean, this is a guy who has 39.5 sacks over the past 4 seasons, and I think also has played the run decently well. It is going to be an intriguing overhaul, to say the least, of this 49ers defensive line. So I think Bosa, Yetur Gross-Matos, Hargrave, and Floyd is their pass rushing package. I think that Collins will come off the field, and I think that you've got guys like Collins and Elliott in there in the middle to stuff the run. Are they DJ Jones caliber players? Maybe not. DJ Jones was really good. It earned him $10 million a year from the Broncos. But the combination of both Collins and Elliott should give the 49ers more of a presence inside against the run than they had before. Now, this is where we get to the roster bubble. And this is where we get to the players who are trying to make the team, but obviously have not yet proven it and still have a lot to earn, and they could showcase it during the preseason games. They need a second defensive end in this rotation if it's going to be a true 8-man. I have Robert Beal Jr. in that spot right now. They got Sam O over here, who's missed a couple practices, hurt, undisclosed injury. They've got Alex Barrett, who's been Mr. Practice Squad for years for this team. They've got Austin Bryant, who was a practice squad guy last year. They also have Drake Jackson, but he's on PUP. And to me, there's no close end in sight to that. He underwent surgery in January and posted a picture of the cast on. And that's really the last that we've heard from Drake Jackson. Kyle Shanahan said that he doesn't expect him back before the end of training camp or the cut down. So Drake Jackson, you could stash him on PUP for now. He's not going to take up a roster spot. To me, that leaves Robert Beal Jr., who I think the 49ers really like, for a reason that you might not be thinking of, as the second rotational defensive end. Robert Beal Jr. ran a sub 4.5 40 at 250 plus pounds at Georgia. Listen to that again. He ran under 4.5 at over 250 pounds. So you're thinking about the new kickoff rule, right? And the new kick return and kickoff rule, coverage and return. You're going to want guys that are both big, strong, and fast. You want all three of those characteristics. Regardless of whether or not Robert Beal Jr. is a polished pass rusher, he matches all the criteria that you're going to want on special teams, which is going to be more of a running play, but it's going to be a running play in space. So it's going to be really important to have a guy who has the physical tools to compete in space. It's not going to get swallowed up by blockers, but also not going to be too slow for return men. To me, a guy that runs a sub 4.5, and now he's put on a little bit of weight. I think he's around 260 now to better play the run on defense. To me, that sounds like a really intriguing piece for your special team. So I've got Robert Beal Jr. in there as the 49ers defensive end behind Bosa. He's still got something to prove, but when I look at the other options, especially since Drake Jackson isn't one of them, it seems like the best one to me. Then you have to decide who your ninth lineman on this team is. And maybe they carry 10. They have carried 10 in the past, but 9, I think, is the typical number. Is it going to be an edge guy? Is it going to be an interior guy? I think that the rest of these edge guys are all stashable on the practice squad. So it's probably going to be an interior guy. So many people ask me about Kalia Davis. We talk about DJ Jones. That's the only player the 49ers have ever comped to DJ Jones with his explosiveness. So these preseason games are really important for Kalia. I think it's a battle between Kalia and Shaquille Brown over here. By the way, Shaquille's going to get a chance to play against his initial team, the Titans. The Titans cut him, and the 49ers play at Tennessee on Saturday. Big, strong guy who tried his way out and made it to the 49ers through that avenue. You look at him and you look at Kalia Davis, and yeah, Evan Anderson is a big, stocky body. They gave him a lot of guaranteed money for an undrafted free agent, $280,000. But as a rookie, I'm probably leaning more toward the practice squad with him. But Shaquille, he's had a year in the league. I get it. He was hurt, but we'll see if it's he or Kalia Davis that's able to grab that roster spot, because I know there's limited roster spots along that 53-man roster. McGill, T.Y. McGill was on the practice squad last year, and I could see him being that practice squad yo-yo again for the 49ers. There's a decent floor with T.Y. McGill. It's not a crazy ceiling, but he's a vet. You're going to keep him in the building, and it's going to give you some, you could breathe a sigh of relief at the defensive tackle position. You know that the bottom's not going to fall out of the room if you have a couple injuries, because T.Y. McGill can be called up and he can contribute in that way. All right, we have just finished the defense. That's really good. Should I look at some questions? I'm going to take a look. I just want to drink a little bit of water here. Been talking for 41 minutes straight. Oh, that's good. There's nothing better than a nice drink of water when you are thirsty. So that's what I'm up to right now. You know what I could show you guys? This will be fun. We can show you a couple things from practice today, or we can show you this, which I have to send to my computer right now. I want to put in a little plug for the best breakfast sandwich in San Francisco. So they call this sucker right here, and I swear to God, this is what they call it. This is the Lombardi special at Jumpstart Coffee at 24th and Guerrero. The Lombardi special has egg, bacon, American cheese, and avocado on a croissant. And ask Peter. Peter's there almost every day for the Lombardi special. And no, it's not a $40 sandwich. It'll cost you about $10. Really good price for San Francisco. That's our food recommendation. Jumpstart Coffee, 24th and Guerrero. That is our halftime food break in between the defense and the offense. Just tuned in. Can you start over? No. Okay, guys, if you want to watch the replay of this, you can watch it on YouTube. You could watch it on the Lombardi Lounge podcast. Sorry, I can't start over. I know you're joking. I hope you are. You could look at the breakfast sandwich all over again, but check this out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all those good spots. But sorry, I cannot start over. I have to go to the offense now. We got 3,650 people waiting for me to start talking about the 49ers offense. So we're going to move on to the offensive line. As you can tell, we're going to finish with the quarterback position. I think people like the sandwich, which is good. All right, O-line. Trent Williams, I should probably shade him in whatever color we shade holdouts or hold-ins in. What color should we shade those in? Let's shade him in like this blue there. And we could shade Brandon Ayuk, since he's not practicing, in this shade of blue. Okay. It's a lot of different color codes now. It looks like a game of Tetris, but we'll make it work. So, but Trent Williams, I've done videos and I've written articles about how we can expect the 49ers to pay him. They can find a win-win. At this point, there's nobody freaking out about Trent Williams. I think that a soft deadline for the 49ers, just so he could start building a little bit of a callus. He is 36 years old, might be toward the middle of this month. If he's not there in time for the Saints practices on the 15th and 16th, then we'll start talking about this with a little bit more urgency. But this is a 53-man roster projection. So for the time being, we're not going to dedicate all too much energy into contract details. We're not going to dedicate time into speculation. We're going to talk about how guys are actually performing at training camp. And unfortunately for the 49ers, Trent Williams has not had a chance to perform yet. Well, he's had a chance, but he hasn't because he is holding out as we speak. So we move on. Jalen Moore has been his backup. Jalen Moore, I think, has been decent in pass protection. I think the bigger 49ers issues have come in pass protection on the right side with McKivitz and along the interior where there's been a lot of injury issues. I could take Feliciano off of injury shading at this point. He's back, but he's shuffling between different positions. He's giving the 49ers some depth at center. He's, obviously started at right guard for the team last year. He could also play left guard for San Francisco. Feliciano is what I think to be the ideal sixth lineman for this team. What's really interesting is what's happening at right guard while Spencer Burford has a broken hand and is out for a couple more weeks. And that is the rookie Dominic Puni. I think it's been 4 or 5 straight practices as the first teamer. One can argue that it's by necessity, which it is. I mean, Feliciano's been out and Dominic Puni, now he's back, but you just want to keep that continuity in there with Spencer Burford also out. So Dominic Puni is a natural heir apparent for that job. But even if, it's just by necessity, we do have to comment on how well Dominic Puni has carried himself. We knew that he was a good pass protector, probably a better pass protector than run blocker in college at Kansas. 2 thumbs up there. I don't think that he's been overpowered at all at the NFL level. I think he's been beaten. I've seen him lose some one-on-ones, but I also saw him against the red-hot Jordan Elliott the other day, who's one of the 49ers' widest defensive tackles, and I saw him anchor in one-on-ones. And I say red-hot for Jordan Elliott. That was the practice where he might have had 2 sacks. So Dominic Puni is promising to begin. Will he start? Will he not start? We'll see where Spencer Burford is when he comes back, but that position can be upgraded. Right guard can be upgraded for the 49ers. And I will say, with regard to Spencer Burford, he started as a rookie in 2022. So up until then, we were always like, unless it's a first-round pick like Mike McGlinchey in 2018, do the 49ers really want to start a rookie up front? Well, by 2022, it was clear that they did want to start a rookie up there. They would rather have started Spencer Burford and let Daniel Brunskill that year be their 6th offensive lineman than vice versa. So they're not afraid to go to the rookie if that rookie has given them enough reason to believe that he can be the guy at that position. I think Puni right now is day by day giving the 49ers more and more belief that he can be the guy at the right guard position. Now, it's August 4th. We still have a way to go. But just to keep that in mind as you take a look at this offensive line depth chart. McKivitz, he's hoping for a second-year jump for the 49ers, and the 49ers are hoping for one too. Chris Furster was talking about McKivitz the other day. He said, he's a really good run blocker, not as good as Mike McGlinchey, who was an elite run blocker, but it's obviously better than his pass protection. And I don't think it takes a genius detective to see that out on the field. 49ers had one of the top run offenses in the league last year. A lot of that obviously is thanks to Christian McCaffrey, but they also had pass protection ranked in the 20s. So they need McKivitz to be better. He ranked down there near the bottom of all tackles with Mike McGlinchey of all people last season. So you want McKivitz to be better for many reasons. One of them is so you don't have to give tight end help all the time. Blocking. Of course you're still going to give tight end pass protection help, and you should. Giving Brock Purdy a clean pocket should be of very high importance, but you want to give the offense a little bit of expandability downfield that it didn't have last year if you do see improvement from Colton McKivitz. As far as swing tackle goes, that's a battle between Jalen Moore and Chris Hubbard. Speaking of Brunskill, he actually recommended Hubbard because Hubbard played with Brunskill in Tennessee last season. My thing about swing tackle, it's really interesting because to me, we've only seen Moore deliver at left tackle, and we've only seen Hubbard deliver at right tackle. Are the 49ers in a position? Hubbard and Parker are all, I forgot to mention Brandon Parker. Parker's also in this battle. So you've got Moore, you've got Hubbard, and you've got Brandon Parker. Moore has been limited to left tackle. Hubbard has been limited to right tackle. Parker, I think, can play a little bit of both. Former 3rd-round pick of the Raiders. How many can you afford to stash on this roster? Can you afford to stash 10 offensive linemen? This is where I think I'm a little too heavy on the offensive line. I think that in the past, we've seen as few as 8. We've seen as many as 9, but we've never seen 10. And I've got 10 guys right now on the inside of the 53-man roster projection. I think I'm going to have to get rid of somebody. I think Feliciano is definitely a player that they want there. I think that obviously Purdy, he's in the second string right now, but I think he's definitely somebody they want there. Zakel's gotten some first team reps at center. To me, he's trending toward being on the team. So maybe it's Hubbard. If Jalen Moore can beat out Hubbard, but then what do you do with Parker? And do you feel good about Moore also being a potential backup tackle on the right side? Or is that somewhere that you put Dominic Purdy in case you need a backup right tackle? That's tough because he's a rookie. I just feel, I get it. Good quality offensive linemen are in short supply around the league right now. That's the struggle that the 49ers are dealing with. Every single practice I'm coming off the field and I'm saying, boy, it seemed to me that Leonard Floyd won too many reps against the defensive line, even on days against that offensive line, even on days where the offense has done better. Brock Purdy has had to deal with harassment from Leonard Floyd. I expect Nick Bosa to get to the quarterback on every single snap, but when it's Floyd and everybody else collapsing the pocket and making Purdy run a little bit more than I think is healthy for the sustenance of the 49ers offense, you really think that they might need one more piece there. Now, the one piece could be Trent Williams, right? It's possible that everybody improved over last year, but we're just not firmly seeing it yet because your first ballot Hall of Famer, Trent Williams, is not back yet. I think there's a lot of hope riding on that notion. I think that one could argue that Trent Williams is one of the most important players on the 49ers team. You could argue he's the best player in all of football. But the bottom line is he's not there right now, and I'm not getting a firm read on where the 49ers are as an offensive line because of that. I haven't even mentioned Ben Barch yet, who is in a battle, I think, with Nick Zakel to be a swing interior lineman, veteran. They poached him off of Jacksonville's practice squad. Barch dislocated his knee with the Jaguars 2 years ago. So last year with the 49ers, he was still building up strength. We've seen him take some first-team action for San Francisco over the course of this training camp. So does that mean that he's impressing them enough and maybe even more than Nick Zakel? Again, I think the preseason games are going to be very insightful in this regard because we're going to get probably a much firmer look at the pecking order. And with limited spots, it's damn complicated. You've also got Drake Nugent, who's the undrafted rookie center. But Nugent, he's been a third-team guy, okay? So Nugent's probably going to be a practice squad player, but I think that they really want to stock up that center position because I haven't even mentioned Jake Brendel missing every fourth practice or so with the knee tendonitis. John Feliciano's had to spell a little bit of Jake Brendel during some of these practices. So at center. So there's a possibility that John Feliciano has to start at center. So, and he said he's going to retire after this year, or at least he strongly hinted at it on Instagram when he re-signed. So if you're the 49ers, you want to have guys developing in the pipeline at center. That's why they brought in Drake Nugent and Bryson Mays. They had to waive Bryson Mays. They brought in Pat Elflein because they needed more veteran depth immediately because of some of these injuries up front. But to me, it's just interesting because you have a simultaneous logjam, but it's not the best kind of logjam because you don't have a whole lot of proven depth along this offensive line outside of John Feliciano. I get it. Chris Hubbard has been proven depth, but he's also 33 years old. And he's dealt with a lot of injuries recently. Hasn't lasted a full season recently. So jury's still out on whether or not this offensive line is going to be up to the task. One thing I can say is that Trent Williams is needed. And that's why I consider Trent Williams to have quite a bit of leverage. If he says, okay, I'm retiring at age 36, the 49ers would be in a world of trouble. I'm not saying he's going to do that, but I'm saying that's why Trent Williams has the upper hand in these negotiations. If you watched his NFL top 100 players profile, NFL films, you'd come away thinking that he's the best player in football. That's what the consensus seems to be from guys around the league. I guess they voted on it and he wasn't number one, but they also, it's tougher if you're an offensive lineman to get those votes. But some of the guys in their interviews said, this is the best player in football. Either way, he's the best tackle in football, and he's currently not at 49ers practice, and I think this offensive line can really use him. Will they take 10? No. Will they take 9? Maybe. Will they take 8? Maybe. We'll see where those numbers lie along the offensive line. All right, water time for me. We're moving to tight end. Check in with Mike here. Tight end position, I think, is 3/4 of the way there. as far as who the 49ers are going to take on their 53. Man, who would have known that talking for 54 minutes would be this tiring? It's the dog days of August right now. I'm working hard through this training camp. And tomorrow, even though it's a day off for the players, it's not a day off for us. We're going in and talking to the assistant coaches. All right. Tight end position. Let's open this up. We work our way through the 53-man roster projection. So I said that this is 3/4 of the way sorted. And by the way, if you want to ask some questions, and I'm going to answer some questions in a little bit to wrap up this show. We're already almost done, as you can see, with the roster. And you're watching on Twitter, go to YouTube, and you can actually leave questions on the YouTube. And that's how I'm going to answer the podcast questions. So go to the YouTube, watch on there. I'll answer questions through that. And we move on to tight end so we could wrap this sucker up. Counting to 4, because I think they're going to take 4. Kittle, 1, right here. Eric Saubert, 2. That to me has been, I don't want to say a surprise, but it's been a little bit of a revelation. Okay, Eric Saubert is a really trusted blocker. He's been around the league since George Kittle in 2017. And that kind of staying power is impressive, whichever way you look at it. And it really looks like he's the 49ers option there at that second tight end spot, vacated by Charlie Werner, who's now with Atlanta. I think Braden Willis has been good this camp. So I put Braden Willis as my tight end 3. The 4 spot to me is probably between Logan Thomas, who's currently out with a hamstring injury, and Cam Latu, who is, he's got the body. I think he's got the blocking ability, and he definitely has the body to grow into the blocking ability. But we've still seen a couple drops from him, not as bad as last camp. But when we didn't see a drop the other day, we saw the ball get knocked away. Malik Mustafa, I think, got him. It was a catch, and the ball got knocked away, fumble, returned for a touchdown. There's got to be a semblance of reliability that Cam Latu shows, and he's going to have a chance through these preseason games to show that. Logan Thomas caught 55 passes for Washington last year, so you know that he has it from the receiving end. But he hasn't blocked the way that the 49ers asked their tight ends to block, so it's been a big-time point of emphasis to get Logan Thomas aboard blocking the way they need him to block. Will he develop in time to be a guy they can trust on the 53? Will he need to be a practice squad player? Can they even stash him on the practice squad since he did catch 55 passes last year? These are all questions that we don't know the answers to. But we do know that the 49ers have 3 tight ends who have, I think, really, really impressed so far, and they normally carry 4. As far as Mason Pline goes, well, he's a raw player. I think the practice squad is perfect for somebody like Mason Pline. Maybe they carry 2 of these tight ends on the practice squad. Maybe Jake Tungus, who was on the practice squad last year, he's gotten stronger. Maybe he can stick on there as well. Shout out to the Cal Golden Bears. I know that I'm betraying Stanford by saying that, but Jake went to Cal, and I know we probably have a lot of Cal followers. Welcome to the ACC. All right, now we get to the position that everybody's been waiting for, the receiver position. One of the reasons I did this show was so we could actually talk about something substantive instead of rumors, all these couched opinions, and there hasn't been anything substantive about Brandon Ayuk. So I could put that out there. We've just seen speculation, which is fine. Some people do a good job putting their speculation out there and making sure that it's viewed as speculation. But I think a lot of people do a poor job reading that speculation, and they think that it's reported as fact. We haven't had anything that's not speculative released on Brandon Ayuk in a little bit. So I didn't want to go into speculation with this show. I wanted to sit back and I wanted to actually analyze the 49ers roster. For the time being, we've got Brandon Ayuk taking up that X receiver spot. Chris Conley behind him. We've actually seen Chris Conley on the field in this camp. Conley is built and he performs like a prototypical X. And that's what the 49ers need if Brandon Ayuk is not on the field. So, with Ayuk, he could block. I get it. He's got good rapport with Brock Purdy. Conley can block. He's got good rapport with Brock Purdy. Nobody's saying that he's as special of a player as Brandon Ayuk. Obviously not. But he has had a good training camp. and he's used some of his veteran guile to really be in the right place at the right time, don't forget the work that Chris Conley did as a gunner in the Super Bowl, downing those punts. I think that Conley is on a good track to make this 53-man roster, regardless of whether or not this gets resolved with Brandon Ayuk. You got Deebo Samuel. He missed his first day of practice, vet day today. He's been excellent. Looks like he's in the best shape of his life. Juwan Jennings, I mean, he's just a vacuum. He catches everything that's thrown to him. Juwan Jennings, after signing the contract, is looking really good. I can't wait to see Jacob Cowing again. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. He should be back any day now. Speedster, who had a couple nice plays, nice catches and runs on the first couple days of training camp, but unfortunately suffered the hamstring injury, so we haven't seen Jacob Cowing since then. But if he comes back and continues to deliver, you would have to think he's one of those 49ers who makes the 53-man roster. And then when it comes to Ricky Pearsall, I think he's so far everything the 49ers thought he'd be so far in training camp. I was watching him the other day. I think it was his second camp practice. Pearsall was separating really well. Everything that wasn't going to him could have gone to him, and he would have been open. Let's put it that way. We're watching play after play. It's like, damn, Ricky's getting open on the backside. He obviously wasn't in the throwing progression or wasn't high up on that day, but he's climbed that progression over time. He made 2 more catches today. I thought that his muscled up catch against Diamador Lenore today was extremely impressive. I mean, when Ricky Pearsall was drafted, a lot of people said, oh, okay, he's 190 pounds. He might not be strong enough to play that outside receiver position at the NFL level. Maybe he's a slot guy. And I said, well, no, he's tall, though. He's 6'2". So at 6'2", you're not looking for a slot guy at 6'2". And, even though he's only 190, it seemed to me that he had played with some real strength at ASU and then after that at Florida. So when he was able to outmuscle Diamador Lenore for the football today, to me, that was impressive. I think that he's been a willing participant in the run game. Brock Purdy made a good point, though. He said, you just have to let this play out. You have to let guys naturally become part of that offensive ecosystem. You just don't throw them out there and expect them to be target every single snap. It could take 2 weeks, which is why it's ultimately important for Brandon Ayuk to rejoin the team before the start of the season. You can't just have Ayuk show up on Wednesday or Thursday before they play the New York Jets and expect him to be in lockstep with Brock Purdy. The guys are working on the timing right now. Pearsall's working on the timing, working on the trust right now, which is why you're also excited about Jacob Cowing returning. Now, go deeper into this room. You have Trent Taylor, who's been having a hell of a camp. Special teams is going to determine so much of this because you have Ronnie Bell, who made 2 contested catches today. I think Ronnie Bell's quietly had himself a good camp. Quietly, Danny Gray has been much better than he was last season. He's on the outside looking in of this projection too. You've got Tariq Owens, who I think is very raw. You're looking at the practice squad in all likelihood for T.O.'s son. Tay Martin's been out. And you've got Malik Turner and Ronald Darby. Those are 2 players that have been replacements for the hamstring injuries. But when you look at the spot 6 or spot 7, how many are going to make the 53? I see it as a potential battle at the very back of that room between Taylor and Ronnie Bell and maybe Chris Conley. But gosh, Chris Conley, with the work he's done at the X, has been so impressive that I almost want to take him off that list. I think Chris Conley is not a practice squad yo-yo anymore. But Trent Taylor, I mean, Shanahan hinted he could be headed for that kind of treatment. And then you look at somebody like Ronnie Bell. It's entirely possible that Ronnie Bell is given that kind of practice squad treatment if they feel they can keep him in the building, if he doesn't get claimed elsewhere. I think that special teams and punt returning in particular is going to be such a pivotal piece of this puzzle. How comfortable are the 49ers going to be with you returning punts? Because you've got to have a high floor there. I don't care about ceiling. I care about floor. I think they're comfortable with Trent Taylor, which is why he's on the inside of this picture. I don't think they're comfortable yet with Ronnie Bell, but he's got a chance to build more comfort and show that over the course of the preseason, over the course of these games, right? So barring injuries and assuming Brandon Ayuk and everything gets resolved and he's in the building, they could take 7 receivers, but it's probably going to be 6, and you're probably going to make a decision at the back of the room based on special teams comfort. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. Let's go to running back. Those of you who want to ask questions, go over to YouTube. That's I'm not going to check them until I'm done, but you can be ready to ask over there. Running back. I sense the finish line. This is great. McCaffrey. And then you have 2A and 2B. I think Jordan Mason has pulled up into that 2 spot now alongside Elijah Mitchell. Mason can catch the ball. He bought the jugs machine for $3,000. He's impressed in that facet of the game. You've got to love what Jordan Mason has done catching the football. He dropped his first one today, but a whole lot more catches than drops so far in training camp. So McCaffrey, Mitchell, Mason, all definitely good enough to make the team. They have typically carried 4 running backs and 1 fullback in Kyle Juszczyk. So who's the fourth going to be? Well, Isaac Guerrero is out with a hamstring injury. Can he potentially be one of the roster exceptions the 49ers use? Can he potentially be an IR guy that they stash on IR, but then designate to return within 4 games and then stuff works itself out when other guys get hurt? Maybe. He has a more serious hamstring injury than the other players who we've covered. Or does Cody Schrader make the team? Or can you stash Cody Schrader, the undrafted free agent out of Missouri, on the practice squad? As of right now, I've got Guerrero, who's a higher pick, a 4th-round pick, making the team, but that's all TBD on his health. And I've got Schrader as a tentative practice squad projection. I got Patrick Taylor Jr. could also be a tentative practice squad projection. We'll see. But I really need to see these preseason games. I'll go back to what I said at the top. You don't tackle live to the ground in the training camp, but you do tackle live to the ground in the preseason. There's perhaps no bigger running back evaluation opportunity in a game versus practice than there is in preseason games versus practice. That is when running backs are evaluated. And Cody Schrader ran like a bull in college. He led the SEC in rushing for Missouri. And I think that his ability to just out-tough people, break tackles, let's see him try to port that to the NFL level. Let's see him try it against the Titans on Saturday. I think that could answer some big questions for the 49ers. Finally, quarterback. Brock Purdy is starting. Breaking news. There's your quarterback update that you're waiting for. Brock Purdy is going to beat out Trey Lance. He's going to beat out Sam Darnold for the QB position. Oh, wait, neither of those 2 guys are on the team anymore. Sam Darnold is going to start in all likelihood for Minnesota. I think Trey is still 3rd string for the Cowboys. But the fact that there was any question about Brock Purdy starting, if he was healthy enough last year, looks like retroactively the biggest joke of all time, given the fact that he was an MVP finalist, that he led the league in every single quarterback efficiency metric, QBR, passer rating, adjusted net yards per attempt. I mean, it was a monstrous season for Brock Purdy. We'll see where he takes it next, but he's looked good so far in training camp. He's pushed some limits. I know he's thrown a few interceptions, but as we know, he did last year too, and he ended up as an MVP finalist. So it's time to start treating Brock Purdy like the talent that he is, and that is an established quarterback who gets the benefit of the doubt during training camp. So then the question is, who's Brock Purdy's backup? And I think it's definitely hard to argue that the backup quarterback position is going to be better this season than it was last season. You had a stud for a backup quarterback in Sam Darnold last year. You don't have that necessarily anymore this year. Maybe Josh Dobbs grows into the system. I know he delivered some good football for Arizona and Minnesota last year, but it wasn't consistently good football. And you've got Brandon Allen, who's your number 3. And you've got Tanner Mordecai, who is your rookie, who's starting to get more reps. So we'll see with Tanner Mordecai. He might have the strongest arm out of all 4 of these guys. He could really spin it. But I haven't seen any separation between Dobbs and Allen quite yet. I think they've both had good days. They both had bad days. And Mordecai is at the very start of his opportunity. So quarterback battle, very much. Backup quarterback battle, very much to be determined. I think that's going to be some of the most compelling viewing of the preseason. Now, the way Shanahan is looking at it, it's very different than everybody on the outside looking at it. He might have more of an idea than us because he's seeing where all these plays are supposed to go. He has way more insight than what we have as far as quarterbacks executing the system. So that being said, maybe Shanahan is further along in this. I'm not going to pretend to know more than I do, though. And that's what I've seen standing on the practice field on the sideline for all 10 sessions so far. All right, it's 49ers Q&A time. So if you have some questions, hop on over to the YouTube, ask them over there, and I will happily answer them. I want to see how many of you are over there, actually. And give you a couple seconds to head on over and go from there. Yeah, we got like 500 of you over there, so maybe that room grows a little bit, and yeah, there to answer these questions. I am about to open up a big can of worms, and that is the Q&A section. So it'll be good. In fact, maybe we could even, I might even end this simulcast right now. Maybe not. Maybe we'll keep it going on Twitter. Again, I'll repeat it since a lot of you are new to this drill. Head over to YouTube if you want to have a chance to have your question answered. And here we go. How's Kingston looking? Any chance? I think yes, there's a chance, but probably practice squad. He missed a couple days the other day. He's been playing mainly at guard, and he's been playing some right tackle as well. This is the 6th-round pick out of USC. So I would say likely practice squad for somebody like Jared Kingston. That being said, preseason a chance to move up that pecking order. I'm scrolling back up through some of these questions. Who has been the backup for Kyle Juszczyk? How is Juice aging? I think Braden Willis might end up being that backup. Juice is aging really well, by the way. I mean, I thought that last year he put some of his best football on tape. He's still blocking at a lethal level. He executes some of the most difficult blocks in football. That's to cross the formation, take on defensive ends that are much larger than him. But some of his work as a receiver down the stretch in the playoffs last year was really good. Do you guys remember that off-schedule play early first half against the Lions? He made a great catch there, lunging catch downfield, generated some separation. Then in the second half, I mean, he 2 straight games of clutch fourth quarter toe tap catches. NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. So Kyle Juszczyk doing well, and maybe Braden Willis is the player who is behind him in that tight end position. Phil has a question, not football related, but the best places to go see or eat at on a honeymoon in San Francisco. Ooh, that's not bad. It's not bad at all. Well, congratulations if you just got married. And I would say go to Restaurant Row in Russian Hill. That's Hyde Street. There's a place called Frascati on Hyde and Vallejo that could be really good, but you should just check out that whole block. I think you would like. You could go to Union Larder, which is this old auto body shop that's turned into a nice little wine bar with good appetizers. There's a tiny little wine bar across the street. I always forget its name. I think it's called Bacchus Wine Bar. And you should just check out that. That's like the quintessential San Francisco Restaurant Row. If you want your romantic cable car line street, it's at the top of Russian Hill. That's what I would recommend. All right, back to football. If I had to pick a QB2 right this day, who would I pick? I would pick here. There's an interesting rules thing. I would pick Josh Dobbs. Why? Because your emergency third quarterback can come from the practice squad this year. He doesn't have to take up a roster spot. That's another rule that should give the 49ers theoretically an extra player to work with at the 53-man cutdown. So if it's today, you could take Dobbs and you could keep Allen in the room, in the building, if you did that. I think Mordecai still has some more time to prove himself. And Purdy did it in the games in 2022, in the preseason games. So I think that Mordecai is going to have to do that as well. Greg Smith, how's Dominic Puni looking? I think he looks like a vet, and I think it's a big compliment. I think he carries himself really well. The one anecdote I can give you about Dominic Puni is that he was drafted in early May, late April. He came to rookie minicamp less than 2 weeks later. He requested voluntarily all of Chris Furster's teaching install tapes from the spring before he was drafted, and he watched every single minute of them, hours of install stuff, watch every single minute. So rookies don't usually do that. He didn't have to. It wasn't assigned to him. He decided to do it in between the time he was drafted and the time that he showed up at rookie minicamp. So he acted like a vet. And if you act like a vet, that's the first step toward playing like a vet. Will he play like a vet? Well, stay tuned to find out. He's starting at right guard right now at these practices for the 49ers. Can I tell you how I rank the linebacker core as of now? Well, I think I talked about it when I got through that position. So make sure you guys watch the replay when you get to it. But the linebacker core, obviously Warner, Devondre Campbell. And then I think that it's Demetrius Flanagan-Foles is your safe option at linebacker 3. I'm not counting Greenlaw because he's on PUP. But Winters and Graham are knocking on that door for linebacker 3. And it would be a positive for the 49ers if one of their second-year guys could deliver there. And then I think you've got Tatum Bethune, Ezekiel Turner, and Curtis Robinson. But with Robinson and Turner, those are more special teams players for the 49ers. The Ayuk situation, I talked about it. We have no firm updates. There's a whole lot of speculation online. Read whatever you're reading really closely and try to parse the sentences as if they're speculation or if they're actually reporting the 49ers are interested in trading Ayuk. No, there's a lot of speculation, which is okay, but we don't have to react to every single rumor. This is not necessary. We could say, okay, the status quo is here and there are levels of likelihood to different options. We don't rule anything out. So we don't rule out a trade because a good front office would never rule anything out. If you could get good value for Brandon Ayuk and maybe even make your team better, I don't know if that's very likely, but if you can do that, then you keep that option on the table. The 49ers, I gave an example earlier. They've left no stone unturned, this front office. In 2021, the morning that they drafted Trey Lance, they called Green Bay about Aaron Rodgers. They didn't call Green Bay about Aaron Rodgers because they thought they were going to get him. They called Green Bay about Aaron Rodgers because it was worth the phone call. So you don't say no to any offers in the NFL, right? Like you don't accept offer, but you listen to it. And if they get a good enough offer that makes them better, well, yeah, of course. You look at the football team, the only untouchable guy that the 49ers have had come up for one of these contracts has been Nick Bosa. It's the only player that they've deemed completely untouchable. But the situation with Ayuk and the 49ers is the same as it was yesterday, the day before that, the offseason before. And it's the 49ers have leverage. Ayuk is under contract. They have the ability to wait to see if Ayuk meets them at their terms because he's under contract. And they want to win now. So they're not in the business of giving him up and getting worse this season. So if somebody can, find a way to satisfy the 49ers parameters of making the team better now without Brandon Ayuk on it, if some trade partner can do that, I'm sure the 49ers will be all ears. But we have to gauge things by likelihood and use logic when we discuss this. So yes, I took the question. How's the Ayuk situation going? That's how it's going. I think it's irresponsible to go out and say that one thing is going to happen for sure when even the 49ers are in a position where they're leaving their options open. And as Dave said, and hey, I talked for an hour and 16 minutes without talking about it. If we all stopped talking about it, it would be so much better. Yes, that's true. And then Eric Gomes says logic over feelings. Yes, that's the point of the show. We're going logic over feelings. How's Cody Schrader looking? Really good, but I want to see him break some live tackles. That's the next step. Mark says the Niners are a cash-rich team. Let's let them get their finances in order and their A-listers and special talent will return. Tough job, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, they have the most star players, most A-listers out of any team in the NFL. And it is a hard-capped league. And you could fidget a bit with it. We get it. There's flow control, but you have to be a cash-rich team to do that. You got to pay out signing bonuses that, are able to be prorated against the cap. But when you look at star players, Purdy's a star. Obviously, they haven't had to pay him yet. McCaffrey's a star. Brandon Ayuk is a star. Deebo Samuel's a star. George Kittle's a star. Trent Williams is a star. Nick Bosa is a star. Fred Warner's a star. Charvarius Ward's a star. Kyle Juszczyk's a star. Forgot about him. Don't want to forget about Kyle. It's a lot of star players. It's an all-star team. It's hard to fit all of this under the salary cap. I do think it's possible, but it's probably going to take a little bending from Brandon Ayuk's side to make it work, which is why the 49ers are exerting their leverage as we speak. If Coach Kasarik invited you to hit the sleds, if it meant a 5-minute one-on-one interview, would you do it? Well, I think I could get an interview with Kasarik even if I didn't hit the sleds, but I would just want to hit the sleds for the hell of hitting the sleds for the sake of content, right? It wouldn't have to be tied to an interview. I think that'd be fun. I've uh, I'm ready to. I've taken the month off of swimming. I'm ready to get back in the water, and I've been weightlifting a little bit to prepare for the return. We've got to get the Alcatraz swim lined up. Again, those of you who are new to the channel or new to watching the podcast, we're doing a live stream of a swim from Alcatraz back to the city, but only if the 49ers win the Super Bowl. Those are the rules, because I have to do it without a wetsuit, and I'm gonna have to do it in February. So I'm not like too excited to do this unless it's a special occasion. But anyway, maybe hitting the sleds would get me ready for something like that. Zakel versus Barch, who gets in at center? It's such a good question. It's not only who gets in at center, it's who shows they can play a better guard position. Zakel, I think he's come a long way. I mean, he was very raw early on, and we saw that from Zakel in high school in the Cleveland area. We saw it from him in college at Fordham. He started off really struggling in both of those spots, but then he turned it on. And he started off struggling with the 49ers. Is he turning it on now? Well, the game action in the preseason is really going to show us a lot. I think Barch is strengthening too the further he gets from that dislocated knee. Backstroke or breaststroke? Backstroke, but neither really. Freestyle or butterfly. It's going to be what I'm trying to go for. Yeah, Mike's going to be filming the Alcatraz mission live, but there are certain very strict conditions for that. Let's keep that clear. Those of you who are on now, go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Make sure you subscribe to the Lombardi Lounge. You can leave your 5-star review there. Would be much appreciated. That is now up on the podcast, so go check that out wherever you do consume your podcasts. And if you want me to answer a couple questions, head over to YouTube, because that's where the live question capability is. Is Guarendo's injury potentially putting him at risk to lose a spot to Schrader? I don't think Guarendo's going to lose a spot in the building. I think that if he's hurt enough and is still hurt at the time of the cut down, they could use one of those IR return designations on him, which they can do this year. You can put a guy on IR, designate him to return. 2 guys, up to 2 guys can be tagged with that designation. So I think that's a last resort injury for Guarendo. I think they like him, but I think he needs to learn how to keep that hamstring healthy. It was an issue twice in college, and the 49ers would like it to no longer be an issue here at the NFL level. Hell yes, it's the best 49ers podcast. That's why you should go check it out. I mean, we got almost 5,000 people watching simultaneously right now. I think those are record numbers, especially with no breaking news. We're just doing a roster projection. 5,000 of you. So, I mean, let me give Jumpstart Coffee, because the Lombardi special deserves some limelight. Let's give them some love here. Jumpstart Coffee, 24th and Guerrero. I try to support the community as much as possible. I like to go to the mom and pop shops. I'm trying to help San Francisco through this rough stretch that a lot of businesses are having. You should definitely check out Jumpstart Coffee on 24th and Guerrero. Check out the M Stop. I was there earlier, and I should play the M Stop video here. We could play, we'll play the M Stop video to close this thing out. M Stop is a great place to go. The M Stop is like public transit oriented, which I think is super neat. Muni oriented. Let's see if I have that. We hit 5,000 concurrent viewers. That's awesome. Thank you to everybody. So check this out. This is the M stop, Ingleside Balboa Park. Look, they've got Joe Montana and Jerry Rice on the actual streetcar. That was Barry Bonds back there as well. This was the turkey sandwich that Sal made me. Now it's very San Francisco themed with the sports, but you've also got the old Muni transfers. I'm sure you city natives will love that. And on top of everything, you've got the tri-tip grilling outside every single day, fresh. And it's absolutely breathtaking to witness. That's Sal. He's a big Niners fan, by the way. I think he wants to make sandwiches for the 49ers this year. This is one of my favorite spots to check out in San Francisco, right by Balboa Park, the BART station, right off of 280. So this tray was extremely hot when Sal was taking it off. But he did a good job. He held it for the camera just long enough.
It's a chicken pesto topped with a turkey, pepper jack cheese. It's all the traditional sandwich fixings with avocado. And then we top it with our in-house sauce.
There it is. And Dutch Crunch, it's really hard to find anywhere outside the Bay Area. There is a place in Nashville, but it was a San Francisco sandwich guy who opened it with Dutch Crunch. It's really, really hard to find. And here is Sal telling us about his mural.
Obviously, I had to get the Muni on there, just given our theme. So we have Barry Bonds here, knocking a sandwich out of the park. We go further down. I left these open for any of you All-Stars want to come by. Get your face right here, right next to Mr. Jerry. There's a seat there. Of course, Joe Montana, captain, and I had to get Steph in there. I just thought it was. I'm not the biggest basketball guy, but I mean, gotta love the Warriors, gotta love what Steph's done for us, the whole team. And then the story behind the parrots. I don't know if you know, there's a bunch of wild parrots in San Francisco. There was a lady who lived in Twin Peaks, and she had a whole bunch of parrots. And so before she died, she actually asked that when she dies, all the parrots just get set free. And so I think they said there was like 50 or 60 parrots that got set out of her house. And so that's why they're here in San Francisco. So it just kind of became a part of us. And you got to keep the fog in there, Love the mural, though. I feel like it represents the shop, represents the city. And there's plenty of space to just fill in. Steve Young, I love you. You're going on there. You new guys, come on. That whole bus needs to be filled up with new generation guys. It's been a while. Come on, rooting for you guys. Go Niners. This is our year, yeah?
All right, there you go. That is Sal from the M-Stop. Pretty cool. He wants to put Steve Young on his mural, and he wants to put some of the current 49ers. That's how we connect the community to what's happening here on the football field. I think that's a good wrap for Sunday night. Thanks for answering your questions. That was some camp analysis. It was also 49ers 53-man roster projection. By the way, shout out San Francisco Fire Department Station number 13 for the hat. A bunch of cool guys over there. That's the one that they have Brock Purdy's jersey, number 13, signed now. That's an interesting side story, too. They got Cody Ross's 13 from the Giants signed from the World Series parade back in 2011. Now all that needs to happen is Brock Purdy needs to swing by San Francisco Fire Department Station 13. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, check out the Lombardi Lounge podcast. Leave your review, and obviously go and check out the YouTube. Leave your subscription there. Everything would be appreciated. See you guys. I'm off to get a burrito. I'm tired. Bye.